Oh, you're good. Okay, very good. Welcome, everybody. It's October 14, 2024. This is a regular business meeting of the Billings City Council. It's also Columbus Day, and it's also Indigenous People Day. Not officially, but around the country, I participated in an event. And just sort of heads up to the rest of the council, I've said for several years, and I haven't made it happen, I do want to bring in an initiative that would ask the city to recognize what I would propose calling Heritage Day, that would not be limited exclusively to recognition of our Indigenous people and their culture and heritage, but that would be the primary purpose, but it would be more inclusive and allow everybody, whatever ethnic persuasion, to participate in that day. So between now and 1 year from now, look for a sample ordinance from me for council's consideration on that topic. So anyway, welcome everyone. If you would, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation by Councilmember Aspenlider. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, we thank you for our time together today and tonight. We ask you for wisdom, we ask you for grace, and we ask you for guidance tonight as we lead our city and make decisions that impact the residents of this great community. Lord, we ask that you take care of the men and women who protect our city and who protect our country. Lord, we ask that you give favor to those who are hurting, that need assistance and can't find it, and those that are troubled in our great city. With that I pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Tony, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Shaw.
Here.
Gulick.
Here.
Neese.
Present.
Owen.
Here.
Joy.
Present.
Kennedy.
Here.
Aspenlider.
Here.
Tidswell.
Present.
Boyette.
Here.
Rupsis.
Here.
Mayor Cole.
Here. Council, I believe we have minutes from September 23, 2024. Is there a motion or other discussion? Councilmember Boyette.
Mayor Cole. Those are
pending?
those are pending. I sent
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember seeing those. So scratch that. We'll get those at our next business meeting. Council courtesies. Do we have any council courtesies this evening? Seeing none, we do have two proclamations this evening. First, in recognition of Toastmasters Month. And the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas Toastmasters International, a nonprofit educational organization, is a national and international leader in making effective oral communication a reality for hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. And whereas the ability to speak clearly and effectively is a powerful and important skill that can help individuals overcome barriers to effective performance in virtually every endeavor and line of work. And whereas the first Toastmasters Club was formed in 1924 in California, and today after, so that'd be 100 years, and today after 100 years, Toastmasters International has grown to over 270,000 members in 14,200 clubs in 148 countries, including 4 clubs in Billings and 24 clubs in the state of Montana. And whereas Toastmasters International and its member Toastmaster clubs perform a valuable service to its members and the community by helping people develop essential communication and leadership skills that promote self-actualization, enhance leadership potential, and contribute to the betterment of humankind. Now, therefore, I, William Cole, Mayor of the City of Billings, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2024 to be Toastmasters Month for the City of Billings. I don't know if we have anybody with us for either of these. If you do, when I'm done, feel free to come up and tell us more about the proclamation or your organization. The second proclamation is in recognition of National Code Compliance Month and reads as follows. Whereas code enforcement officers provide for safety and welfare of the citizens throughout the United States through the enforcement of local codes and ordinances addressing various issues of zoning, housing, quality of life, health, and safety. And whereas code enforcement officers often have a challenge and demanding role and often do not receive recognition for the job that they do in improving living and working conditions for residents and businesses of local communities. And whereas code enforcement officers are dedicated, highly qualified professionals who share the goals of preventing neighborhood deterioration, enhancing and ensuring safety, and preserving property values and knowledge and application of housing, zoning, and nuisance codes and ordinances. And whereas code enforcement officers often have a highly visible and interactive role in the communities while providing quality customer service and excellence to the communities in which they serve. And whereas code enforcement officers are called upon to provide quality customer service and excellence to the residents and businesses of the communities in which they serve. And whereas our community and the American Association of Code Enforcement want to recognize and honor code enforcement officers and professionals across the United States and bring awareness to the importance of code enforcement to the communities of the United States. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, William Cole, Mayor of the City of Billings, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2024 to be National Code Compliance Month, and call upon all of our citizens to join in recognizing and expressing their appreciation for the dedication and service by the individuals who serve as our code enforcement officers. Thank you very much. I don't know if we had anybody who wanted to comment on either of those, but if so, this is your opportunity. I'm not seeing anyone, so we will move on to council reports. Council, any council reports? Council Member Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The Community Development Board met this month and primarily discussed an application from a developer for affordable housing on Jackson Street. And so as that process goes forward, it should come before council at some time soon. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other council reports? I'll just mention I don't serve on behalf of the city, but I am on the board of the Montana League of Cities and Towns. Their annual conference was about 10 days ago, the week before last in West Yellowstone, very successful. The legislative resolutions that you saw before have all been adopted formally, and the league continues to function well. And next year, the conference will be here in Billings. So we'll have some work to do so that we can be good hosts for the league conference 1 year from today. Seeing no other signs of or hands up for reports, City Administrator report. Chris?
Mayor and Council, mine will be brief. There is no ex parte communication that came in after 3, and I have nothing else to report on. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Public comment on non-public hearing items is our next item up. That means if you are here and you'd like to comment on anything on our consent agenda, which is item number 1, and if you don't have a copy of the agenda, there is a copy back on that gray cart there. So if you'd like to comment on anything in item 1 and any of those subparts, or at least technically item 3C, which is the annexation agreement for the Montana Department of Military Affairs development up on Highway 3, this is an appropriate time to do that. Everything else, there'll be a time for public hearing later, and you should wait, including on that annexation agreement with the Montana Department of Military Affairs on Highway 3. It's fine to wait until we get to that item to make your comments if it pertains to that. But in particular, item number 1, is there any public comment on our consent agenda, item number 1 or any of its subparts? I will close our public comment if no one stands up real quickly. And Nicole, you don't count. So we're going to close the public comment period on item 1 and move on to the consent agenda item 1. Council, are there any separations on our consent agenda?
Full pay for me today.
Very good. I don't see any separations. Doesn't prevent you from commenting once we get to discussion. Is there a motion, Councilmember Aspenleiter?
I move to approve the items on the consent agenda as submitted with
Second by
no
Councilmember
separations.
Thank you, Councilmember Boyette. This is the whole kit and caboodle that's almost never happened before. Any discussion now? Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to anytime we get a donation to the city, we should recognize it. The Breakfast Flakes donating $9,000 to the Billings Police Department SROs, and also the Bet Casino donated $500 for the police department's discretion. I think we need to reward those people by saying thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Councilmember Kulik.
Just had a question on item number F, the memorandum of understanding for regarding the sharing of costs of, I guess, for repairing potentially in the future the irrigation pipe. I'm just wondering if we've investigated the technology for lining pipe, and it seems like that might be a good preventative measure to ensure that our Central Avenue or anything else isn't damaged when it does fail, I guess.
Brandon, can you address that?
Yes, sir. Mayor, Council, thank you. So I looked into that a little over a year ago. At that time, the bill to line that pipe would have been about $1.5 million. It takes a lot of little leagues to make up $1.5 million. But yeah, we have looked into it. It's quite expensive.
Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Neese?
I actually had a question about this as well, because this came to, I think, a work session to us at one point. And so was there anything changed in the MOU agreement between the work session and now?
The formatting changed, and there was a couple minor adjustments made to it.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple minor edits, nothing.
Okay, so if someone were to, if the $100,000 has been in the account and they decide to terminate this, they would lose their funds still, is that correct?
Yeah, that's still, and we did add, once that $100,000 limit's reached, then it is added in there that we would not, no more contributions would be made.
Okay.
But yes, that's still in there, that if someone were to leave, in the unlikely event that someone would leave, that their funds stay in that account.
Okay, and I did see that the maximum is $100,000 that can be in that fund at any one time, correct?
That maximum amount, yes.
Okay, so when it's earning interest at 7%, what happens to that extra amount?
Well, so it remains in once it reaches 100,000, there's no more contributions from the participants, but
But I think the
interest funds would remain.
yeah, but the agreement says there won't be anything more than 100,000 in the fund. So I think the MOU doesn't quite explain what's actually happening then. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Councilmember, I'll just recognize Councilmember Neese if you weren't done, and then Councilmember Joy.
Well, if there's anything else on, everyone has questions about that one. Otherwise, I had some questions regarding G and H, or H, I'm sorry, H and I.
Councilmember Joy, I assume you were not interested in item 1F, so go ahead, Councilmember Neese. We'll come back to Councilmember Joy.
Yeah, so the memorandum of understanding is really actually the software Tyler Technologies. I don't know, Chris, who can answer this, but is this the same software that the police department is using now, to where when we ask them for a report on data, it takes them 2 or 3 officers, 2 or 3 days, and lots of hours to actually get the data, and then to find out that maybe the data is not really what you're looking for? Is that the same software we're keeping? I see Kevin shaking his head no.
So Mayor and Councilmember Neese, I'll have David Watterson, our IT director, help answer the question. And I would think you're not just interested in if it's the same company, but.
No, I'm just interested in the same software because our data from our police department is really inadequate, and I don't want to keep renewing a contract when we find out it's just not doing, it's not getting the data that we're requesting, and it takes officers hours and hours and hours to get data that's, not even the stuff that we're looking for. So I saw Kevin saying it's not the same software, so if it's not, then I don't have any further questions about that, because it sounds to me like it's not the same issue that I'm talking about. So,
Would you like David still to comment, though?
if you'd like to, you can, but I'm satisfied.
Just to clarify, the Tyler software, we have had since one version or another since 1990. in 2013, we signed a 10-year agreement with them and upgraded, and then New World Systems was purchased by Tyler. Last year, instead of signing a multi-year agreement, we went to a one-year agreement, and council approved that. The reason we brought it back is in that agreement, it says that it will increase by the new rates. And so because it's a higher amount than it was last year, we wanted to bring it back as to make sure you're aware of the increase in cost. And we're still maintaining, looking at a one-year agreement because the police department and other public safety partners are considering options to see whether or not they would replace Tyler in the future, and they don't want to get committed into a long-term agreement at this time. So that's why the 1 year. And just to put it into perspective, if we signed an agreement today with a different company to replace Tyler, it's a 2-year process just to replace it. And so it is quite extensive and large. And so this time next year, it's very likely, I mean, we will be back with a 1-year agreement again. And we also then, when you look at or H, the MOU with the county, it didn't align as well as it needed to with the wording of the Tyler contract. And so we, through the help of Todd, adjusted the MOU so that it aligned with the same wording and escape clauses, et cetera. So it was just fine tuning that MOU. So the MOU won't have to come back again next year because this is now a 3-year MOU. And of course, it can be terminated if we move to something different before that time.
Yeah, thank you. My question was about the data, and Kevin answered it. It's a different contract, Kevin, if you can explain why we're not getting good data out of the police department versus why this is not it, that'd be great.
So, Councilmember Neese, I thought you were referring to item number G first, so that's why I was shaking my head. No, that's not the exact same system, but when you get into H and I, that is the records management system for the police department.
Oh, it is.
And that's something that we are looking at, just like David explained, because of some of your inquiries, some other things that we're dealing with. So in the near future, we're going to start that process of, do we need to upgrade something in Tyler, do something of that nature, look for a different system, or what does it need so we can draw the information out?
Okay, so that's good. We're keeping this on a short leash so we can find a data system that actually works, is what I gather. So thank you. Appreciate that.
And I think it's a great time to acknowledge the police department. They've engaged with our new systems analyst that is focused on this software. And together, along with the police department and the vendor, they have resolved a lot of issues, but there's still some out there. So they are making progress. And again, kudos to both our staff and to the police department for everything they're doing.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to comment, there are items on our agenda that involve MOUs between the city and the county, and barring perceptions, the city and the county do cooperate a lot, and these MOUs are very important for that seamless kind of community and jurisdictional cooperation that's necessary. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilmember Neese.
Yeah, one last one, item L. This is the preliminary plat extension for Trails West. I don't know who can answer the question, but I asked this question the last time we had an extension, whether or not that waiver is going to be extended, because I think they have, if I remember correctly, had a 3-year extension. Now we're going to extend it some more. And of course, that waiver is only for subdivision is only 20 years, so it's getting shorter and shorter every year. So do we know, and I believe the last time they said they would see if there's a way they can actually extend those waivers on that. Do we know if the waivers are being extended every time we extend these subdivision preliminary plats? And is there a way to do that?
Thank you, Councilmember Neese and Mayor and Council. So this is the extension of the preliminary plat. So none of the final documents have been signed, so neither the SIA nor the waiver have actually taken effect yet. So they won't take
Okay.
effect until they
Okay, so,
sign it.
okay,
And
so
then it
even,
would start, but-
even though the documents showed like 2020 was the date of the waiver and the document that we saw, it's not 2020, it's when they start the actual finalization of the subdivision.
Yeah, Councilman Maroney, they'll actually sign, we'll signed and recorded SIA and waiver at that point when they do the final plat, and then that'll start the clock.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Very good, thank you. Anything else, council, the way of discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll move to a vote. Motion is for approval of the entire item 1, our consent agenda. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. 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 If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes item number 1, brings us to our regular agenda. Tony, would you please read item number 2?
Public hearing for land use contrary to zoning for Rose Park School. No action necessary.
Good, we do have a presentation on this, so Nicole.
I don't know where it is. I think it's on this computer. Okay, well, that's coming up. State law allows public agencies to use public land, contrary to local zoning, to do things that no other person or agency can do, such as provide landfills, detention facilities, public works places. In this case, Rose Park School provides education to Billings residents, their children, and they have a very outdated reader board sign that is changed by hand all during the school year, including when it's 20 degrees below zero. And so only one message at a time can be conveyed to the students and parents of what's happening at the school. When we updated our code in 2021, one of those updates basically took the right of having an electronic message center sign away from uses in the public 2 zone, and all uses such as schools and churches are in public 2 zone districts. So this would be contrary to the zoning to allow them to have electronic message center sign. And maybe it doesn't work. Nope. Okay. There's only a few slides because you can provide comment to the applicant, to the school district, but there's really no approval or denial or attaching conditions. It also is the opportunity for any member of the public to provide comment on the proposed use. Here's Rose Park School. It's on 19th Street West, north of Grand Avenue. Next. Oh dear. We have had this problem all week with Microsoft PowerPoint. If you're listening, please fix this. We put the pictures in the right way, and you save it, and it pulls it up the wrong way. So this is the existing sign, hand changing reader board sign. Next. Oh, that one's the right way. The proposed sign will be replaced with an electronic message display sign, so it can announce several messages during the day. Go ahead. And as I said, the state law did change in 2021 and moved this public hearing from the Board of Adjustment to the governing body, both for the city and the county, because the legislature thought that it was important that the local governing body be the convener of that public comment. And so that was the change in 2021. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Questions for Nicole? Councilmember Boyette?
Thank you, Mayor. Nicole, does this thing turn off at night, or does it stay on 24 hours a day, or do you know?
That's really up to the school to decide whether they want to have it on overnight or if they basically put it in power saving mode overnight. Generally, because this faces a neighborhood and there are no students there, generally after 9 o'clock, and there is no activity after 9 o'clock, I would think that they'd want to save some money on power.
Any other questions for Nicole? Councilmember Gillick?
I too was going to speak on the subject of brightness at night. There are LEDs, signs have to be quite bright to be seen in the daytime, but a lot of the signs have a feature where they, at nighttime, become less bright. And is there any way we can require that if it is used, that we can, require that? I know we don't have, there's not an action we can take in terms of approving or not approving, but.
Right. Well, the hearing is about the actual type of sign.
No.
In our code for electronic message display signs, each sign that has that technology is required to have an automatic dimming feature enabled on that software so that during the day it is brighter so you can see it, and at night it's dimmer so you're not blinding people or creating glare. So that is a requirement. I think most electronic signs do come with that feature already.
Councilmember Gillick and Councilmember Nice?
One quick follow-up. If I see signs, there's one sign that just blinds me at night. It's because it's just very large, and I think it just somehow doesn't have the dimming feature done. So is it code enforcement that I should report that to? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Nice?
Thank you, Mayor. Nicole, so we can't not approve this sign. It's going to be put up. But what I heard you say is we can regulate the signs. And so they're not going to have they can't have, again, I think it's every 6 seconds. They can't do any faster than that. They can't have motion in their sign, things like that. Is that what I understand?
Well, under the code, you can change a message once every 3 seconds. You can't have flashing or animation on signs except in 2 districts, downtown and the East Billings district. So no falling leaves, no twirling dollar signs, no motion borders. Typically, the easiest way to operate this is from one static message to the next. They can do all kinds of things depending on what software you buy to run the sign. All signs, all EMD signs can't flash. And even other types of electronic signs are not allowed to flash. If you see it flashing, you call code enforcement and say, there's a flashing sign at such and such location. It needs to stop.
Okay, I guess what I'm getting at, the school district, because it's a different government entity, has a right to do what they want as far as signing, but they don't have a right to do what they still have to follow the city code for how to run that sign.
Right,
Okay, great.
exactly.
So
they have to meet the wiring requirements for it. They have to submit a sign permit. Those conditions of operations go with the sign.
great, thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other questions for Nicole? A question I was going to ask you, Nicole, but I won't, was even if we can't approve or disapprove, we could still send a letter reminding them of our request that they comply with these conditions of operation, such as the automatic dimming, perhaps being off at night. But what I just heard you say is they're already bound by those conditions of operation. Maybe not the off at night, because that's not part of our existing requirements, but.
No, we do make every applicant for an electronic sign a certificate saying they've read the code for operations, they understand it, and they will comply.
And they will still, the school district still be subject to those conditions?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, nothing else? This is a public hearing, so if anybody would like to comment on item number 2, land use contrary to zoning for Rose Park School, their electronic message display sign, please come forward to the podium. We just ask that you tell us who you are and your address and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Is there any public comment on item number 2? Any public comment on item number 2? This is a public hearing. No one is standing up, no one's coming forward, so we will close the public comment period. Council will move on to the next item unless council has any further questions or discussion for staff. Don't see any, so with that, we'll move to item number 3. Tony, would you please, items 3A and 3B, we'll have a joint public hearing on that. Item 3A is the annexation petition. This all pertains to the Montana Department of Military Affairs development on Highway 3. So, Tony, would you read items 3A and 3B, since the presentation, as I understand it, will be joint, as will our public hearing. So, please, item 3A and 3B.
Montana National Guard property, joint public hearing for annexation 2403 and zone change 1054. A, resolution approving annexation 2403, generally located north of Highway 3 and west of AJ Way. Staff recommends conditional approval. B, first reading ordinance for zone change 1054, generally located north of Highway 3 and west of AJ Way. Zoning Commission recommends approval and adoption of the 10 review criteria.
Thank you very much. Did we lose Councilmember Kennedy? Okay. I don't know if anybody could he's back on. Okay, very good. Just want to make sure that we have everybody. So with that, we'll turn it over to Hunter to begin the presentation on the annexation petition.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. So as previously stated, so tonight we're having a joint hearing for annexation 2403 and zone change 1054. The owners of the property are the Montana Department of Military Affairs with their agent Mimi Wallach, who is joining us here tonight. So they will be available for any particular questions they have. So as for the interconnectedness of relations of the items tonight, as previously mentioned, we're going to be having a joint public hearing on the annexation and the and the zone change. The annexation is going to go over the annexation petition and the annexation policy guidelines, as well as the ward boundary ordinance, as including the development agreement as well. And then we will also be going over the zone change 1054, which is happening alongside this annexation. So here's the annexation exhibits. So the properties in question are currently referred to as tracts number 4, 5, 6A, and 6B of Certificate of Survey 1889. These are generally located north of Highway 3 and west of AJ Way. These are west of the airport. Altogether, these 4 parcels are, let's see here, 78 acres gross, more or less. So here is the current limits of annexation. So all the area in white is currently part of city limits. And the kind of highlighted area on here is the area that is being annexed. So here's the current vicinity of the property. Outlined in red is the current subject property. The area that is outlined in the dotted green is land that is currently within city limits and owned by the National Guard. They underwent a similar annexation and zone change process last year. They're all altogether surrounded by the Billings Rod and Gun Club to the north of it, the Sandcliff subdivision to the south, the Billings airports, and the Billings Flying Service Industries to the west, or I'm sorry, to the east. So here's the current zoning configuration of the area. This property, as well as all the immediate surrounding property to its west, is zoned A, agriculture, since it is still in the county. The area that was previously marked with the green lines is currently zoned P3, Public 3. This was from that similar zoning and annexation action last year that the Department of Military Affairs underwent. And then the airport land is currently zoned Public 2. And then likewise adjacent to everything is some light industrial and heavy commercial land. And then everything to the south side of Highway 3 is zoned N3 for a lot of the RIMS property. So here are some current the closest available photos we could get to the subject property. These photos are currently being taken approximately about right here. This was the closest accessible part to the property. These areas were not easily accessible from a public right-of-way at this time. They are going to be annexed by, I'm sorry, they are going to be accessed by the development happening on the land that's currently annexed into the city. They're building some internal roads as part of the ongoing development there. So this is the closest available photo we had looking west toward the property location, which would generally be along that hill crest there. This is the property looking east along AJ Way. This is towards the airport. This is looking south along AJ Way towards Highway 3. And then this is looking north along AJ Way, which is facing Billings Sign Service and the commercial developments that are going up around there. So regarding the annexation policy criteria, staff finds that this annexation is meeting all the criteria. It is located within Zone 1 of our limits of annexation map. The city will be able to provide adequate city services at a cost acceptable to the city, which will be covered in the annexation agreement. The existing and proposed public improvements within the area will need to meet city standards, which is also likewise going to be covered by the annexation agreement. All the property owners within the area will have to sign a waiver of right to protest for the creation of a special improvement district. This is included as a condition of approval and likewise included in the annexation agreement. All residential property owners within the area being annexed will need to create or join an existing park maintenance district. This property is neither adjacent to an existing park maintenance district, nor is going to be creating any additional parkland for the city, so this criteria will not apply here. Residential densities planned for development within the area to be annexed will need to meet an overall minimum average density as defined within our growth policy. There is no permanent residential facilities being planned as part of this public development, so that criteria will not apply. And then finally, the annexation will need to conform with the goals of the adopted City of Billings growth policy. We feel that it is meeting the growth policy goals of essential investments relating to public and private expenditures to public values. A public campus like this, we feel, is appropriate for that. And then the prosperity goal, where we are promoting equal opportunity and economic advancement. It is our understanding that this kind of developments would bring some additional jobs and economic activity to the immediate vicinity. So, going over the zone change 1054. So they are going from currently A, agricultural, to public 3, P3 zoning. This is the zoning that we generally use for public institutions that are best defined as campuses. So things like hospitals, universities, military bases. And so going over their proposal, we feel that this zone change does meet all 10 of the zone change review criteria. And so so we're feeling it's meeting the zoning criteria as well as the growth policy. P3 is compatible with adjacent uses, given that some immediately adjacent land is already P3, as well as the airport land is already P2. This will consider the public health, safety, and welfare, as well as the light and air and fire and other dangers, all of which would be addressed through zoning at the time of construction. And then building upon that, any compliance necessary for any construction or development they have will be handled at the time that they apply for that. As of this moment, and the applicants could maybe speak on this a bit more, there is no immediate plans for development on this property once it is annexed into the city. But their initial ideas for the area does mention this land will eventually be used for the development of a readiness center, which will be used on sporadic occasions, on usually a once monthly and possibly annually certain training regimens for the National Guard. So, our recommendations for tonight. So, staff is recommending to the City Council to hold a public hearing on the annexation, having a joint public hearing on the annexation and the zone change. Regarding the zone change, the Zoning Commission is recommending approval to the board. So again, we are recommending approval and everything alongside the findings of fact and the standard criteria. Any questions?
Thanks, Hunter. Council, I'll open up for factual questions for Hunter. We want to make sure that our applicant has an opportunity to comment if they'd like to. Their agent, Ms. Walk, is with us, and Colonel Gearing also.
I'm a different Colonel, but yes, sir.
Okay, the Colonel is with us. So we'll have an opportunity. We want to make sure they have an opportunity to address you if they would like. But and then we'll open it up for public comment. So to start with, though, do we have any factual questions for Hunter before we turn it over to the applicant? Okay, Councilmember Neese?
Mayor, Hunter, thank you, Mayor. Hunter, just real quick, the waiver of right to protest, is this the same waiver that we see in all the other annexations? Because I thought we had things about parks and trails in there, and I don't see that any, and I know there's going to be no parks or in this area, but as far as the SIDs, is this a modified waiver?
To my knowledge, I don't know. This was the standard form that we had available to us, so that is what I included.
Okay. All right. Thank you. It looked to me like it was maybe been a little bit shorter or different, but thank you.
Councilmember Neese, I appreciate your eagle-eyedness. You're absolutely right. In the past, we've added that language. This has generic language that arguably already covers that because it says, and other improvements which the city of Billings may require. So I don't know if there's any harm done, but it never hurts to mention these things specifically so there can't be any doubt about it.
Yeah, I think that's what we used to have was the generic, but I think we had it changed, so I don't know if this is the same waiver.
That's my recollection as well.
So we may want to double check this waiver to make sure it's not.
So staff
an
can think
older
about
version.
that, or we could rely on the existing language, but I think the current form does specifically mention that for these reasons.
Thank you.
And Wyeth is weighing in here. I don't know if you wanted, Hunter, did you want to comment further?
Yeah, yes, Mayor Cole. Part of the regular waiver right to protest, the more specific one that would apply here is attached to the annexation agreement itself.
Oh, okay, very good. So this is the resolution approving the annexation that we're looking at, not the annexation agreement, I guess.
Yeah, I understand. Why wouldn't the waivers to right to protest be the same?
Wyeth, you want? I mean, is there any reason we couldn't just condition the using the same waiver? And why is there two waivers?
So Mayor and Council, Councilmember Neese, it looks like, yeah, we just need to check because our waiver, like what, as Hunter pointed out, what's in the annexation agreement is the correct waiver. This isn't a subdivision at this time. So we'll have to just double check the resolution language to make sure that they're the same because they would be the same and they would be the one that's attached to the annexation agreement.
Okay, so in any motion for approval, we would just want to specify that the most current form waiver is attached to the agreements and the resolution. Okay.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Very good. Anything else before we ask the applicant if they have any comment? Okay, I don't see anything else, so I don't know if the agent or colonel, you want to comment? Please feel free. Except be warned, you might have some questions.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor and Council. I don't really have a whole lot to say. Hunter did a great job of explaining what we're trying to do. But I do thank you for your time. As Hunter's saying, we're trying to move what we have. The FMS shop is one of our buildings that's going to go up there on the campus in the near future, as well as a new readiness center that'll go in along with that aviation support facility that is actually being built currently. As you see the construction, and even in that picture you saw, excavators moving dirt. So that is what we have planned for the whole 138-acre campus, as well as in time, and as funding allows, of course, everything ties to dollars. The whole innovation part of it is possibly emergency services and some other community type tying in with the police and fire. We've conducted over 100 rescue or search and rescue missions, and a lot of them have happened since we've opened up the aviation support facility here in Billings. So the relationship we have with Yellowstone County, as well as the other in this southeastern part of Montana, has been phenomenal. So I guess that's where I'll end it, but I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Colonel, I'll just start off with what I believe our staff report indicated, and you alluded to it, that completion is not projected for almost 10 years. Our staff report says 2034. Just want to make sure that wasn't a misprint. Is that really the target, about a 10-year build out here?
Sir, it's probably longer than that. Tied to federal dollars and federal spending. Our first major effort, the two major pieces we want to get is that readiness center and then that FMS shop to support the units we're pulling into Billings. Our goal is we fight every year to try to get money to support those two facilities from the federal government. We have Mr. Miller and I have a long process to work with National Guard Bureau, then Department of Army, then Department of Defense, and then finally Congress to try to get that federal money for it. So that's a 10-year build out. Along with that is a whole lot of other stuff, and it could be 10, 20, 30 years, unfortunately. It's just how well we can compete for projects across the nation. Okay.
Welcome to the federal government.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for the Colonel? I don't see any. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Okay. If nothing else from council, we'll move on to our public hearing component. If anybody would like to comment on either item 3A, which is the annexation proposal, or item 3B, which is the zone change proposal, this is your opportunity. So please come to the podium, just tell us who you are and your address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Do we have any public comment on item 3A or 3B? This is a public hearing, so feel free. Don't hesitate. Item 3A, 3B, this is a public hearing. Is there any public comment? No one is standing up. No one is coming forward. So we will close our joint public hearing on both 3A and 3B and come back to council. We do need to address these separately. Item up first will be item 3A, the annexation proposal. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken testimony, I move to approve a resolution conditionally approving annexation 24-03 as recommended by staff, with the caveat that the right of protest be the most current form.
Very good. Councilmember Shaw indicated a second. Discussion now on the motion. Would either of you like to address your motion before we turn to Councilmember Neese? Nope. Okay, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, I was going to ask to hear from our airport director, Jeff Roach, about this, just to make sure and see how this would impact the airport up there, because now we're actually bordering the westernmost part of the airport, kind of starting to lock it in.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It is very important for the airport to ensure that we follow our FAA grant assurances. And in this particular case, it is to protect from non-compatible land uses in and around the airport itself. We protect our ability to continue to receive Airport Improvement Program grants and other federal funding by meeting our grant assurances that we signed on to when we have taken federal funding in the past. The language that we propose to add to the annexation agreement will allow us to protect from noise-sensitive development in this area, as well as other non-compatible land uses. Things like congregation of large groups of people, pyrotechnics, lights, and other glares, shooting ranges without protection for ricochets and baffling. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at when we talk about non-compatible land uses that are specifically spelled out in the grant assurances. We've had a very positive relationship with the Montana National Guard in the development of their Army Aviation Support Facility that's currently under construction. We've communicated, coordinated, and cooperated with them to develop a stormwater easement as well as the actual construction of their existing facility. And we don't see any change to that relationship in the future, but we just want to be sure that we have the language included in the agreement that will make sure that there's no question about whether or not we are following our FAA grant assurances.
Great, thank you very much.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions for Jeff? Don't see anything, thank you. Councilmember Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to understand one point. Congregate facility, is that what you were, what exact term did you use? I was thinking more of what he's describing as something that might be congregate, but I'm not sure.
So congregation of large groups of the public. So in that case, it would be things like churches, schools, in sports fields, things like that that would bring large groups of the public. In this case, we're looking at people that are conducting training. And as long as the noise-sensitive development does not occur or other non-compatible land uses, we're satisfied with what they're proposing. We just want to make sure that we keep talking with them regularly about what their plans are for future development so it doesn't impact the airport.
Thank you.
Very good. Council, any further discussion on the motion? The motion is for approval of item 3A. Any further discussion? And Councilmembers Kennedy and Tidswell, please put up your little yellow hand at any point, and if I fail to see you, feel free to unmute and just say something. I don't see any little yellow hands on the screen, however. Nor do I see anybody raising their hand here. Council will proceed to a vote if there's no further discussion. Okay, seeing no indication of that, we will put it to a vote. The motion is for approval of item 3A, the annexation petition. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes item 3A. It brings us to the zoning proposal, 3B. We've had the public hearing on this, so it's back to council. Councilmember Gulick?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion. But we have to, I guess we had our public joint public hearing. So having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve first reading ordinance for zone change 1054 and adopt the findings of the 10 review criteria as recommended by the Zoning Commission.
Second by Councilmember Shaw. Would either of you like to speak to your motion? It's a no. Any further discussion on item 3B by the council? I am not seeing any hands. We'll proceed to an immediate vote then. If in favor of the motion, which is for approval of item 3B, please say aye. 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 If opposed, please say nay. That motion also passes unanimously. It concludes 3B. 3C will be the annexation agreement. Is there any further staff presentation of any type on item 3C? There is not. Hunter indicates with a shake of his head. So we'll just give it to council. Councilmember Aspenleiter?
I move to approve an annexation agreement with the Department of Military Affairs as recommended by staff.
Very good. Second by Councilmember Boyette. Would either of you like to speak to your motion? It's a no. Further discussion on the motion. Seeing none, we'll proceed to immediate vote. Motion is for approval of item 3C. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. 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 If opposed, please say nay. That motion passes unanimously. Item 3D is the proposal to add this to, it would be Ward 1. Okay. I assume there is no presentation on item 3D. We do need to have a public hearing on that item now, so if anybody really wants this property in your ward, this is your time to speak up. We'll open the public hearing. Is there any public comment on item 3D, which would just add this property to Ward 1? No one is coming forward. We'll close the public hearing on item 3D. Is there a motion on item 3D? Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the first reading ordinance expanding the boundaries of Ward 1 as recommended by staff.
Very good. Councilmember Gulick makes the second. Any discussion on the motion? Don't see any. We'll proceed to a vote. The motion is for approval of item 3D. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes all of item 3 and brings us to item 4. Tony, would you please read item number 4?
Public hearing and first reading ordinance amending subdivision regulations. Staff recommends approval.
Very good. We'll have a presentation by Dave Green. My understanding is that he may be joined by our city engineer, Mac Fogelsong. While they get set up, you can have a glass of water or something.
Good evening. Is everybody ready?
It's all yours.
We're going to do a brief presentation and then we will be able to go from there answering any questions that you may have. So this is a public hearing for the proposed amendments to the city subdivision regulations. Just a history of meetings that we've had in the past, starting through February through October, where the public's had the opportunity to participate and give their input on proposed regulations. Generally, there are 3 basic updates to these regulations: changes in state statutes that have been added to the regulations and required by the state, proposal of moving layout of blocks and lots from the zoning code, which has already been approved, to the subdivision code, where it makes more sense because that's where you're laying those out, and changes to subdivision regulations requested by other city departments. So legislative, of course, changed phase development opening time. If you get everything done within 5 years, you don't have to come back for a public hearing, which currently, or before this, you had to come back to open every phase to a public hearing. Expedited was taken and used as a possibility of you can have a subdivision of any size, and you can, if you meet all the requirements, no variance is being asked for, and do everything you're supposed to do, you can do an expedited review, which is basically a major subdivision. It, strangely enough, goes through the same subdivision process, but they're calling it expedited. Gift or sale to family member, this was quite a common exemption, but it was only possible if it was outside of platted land. Now you can do it within a subdivision or anything that's already been platted. And so that exemption is now open quite a bit to a possibility of subdividing property that's already been subdivided once before. And then there is what is called administrative review for minor subdivisions. A minor subdivision could be submitted. Everyone reviews it, which includes all staff, engineering, public works, fire, and environmental and planning. If they meet all the requirements, then it can be administratively approved. And they have 30 days. We give notice to the neighbors and to have 30 days to respond. If there is no response, then that stands, and then they move forward to final plat. If we do get a response from a neighbor in writing, then they do come back to a governing body for preliminary approval. Overview of some of the other things that have been happening in our subdivision regulations. We have added definitions, changed definitions, taken some definitions out that no longer apply. The submittal process is updated. We used to have everything by paper, and we'd only take things electronically now, which has saved a bundle of paperwork. Take the requirements of street layout from city zoning, put it in subdivision regulations. Permanent cul-de-sacs may not represent more than 20% of total roadway miles in a subdivision. Phase subdivisions, if all phases are completed, I went over this, within 5 years after final plat. You don't need to come back for a public hearing to open each phase. Street frontage for parkland, that's always been kind of a problem we've had, that some developers only give you a 20-foot opening into a 2-acre park. So we have proposed that they do a minimum opening per acre, and that way we make sure that there's access to the park and people can see it and know that it's there. And then streetlights is another thing that has been proposed by staff in lighting neighborhoods and meeting some of the SEPTED requirements and proposals that are for safer neighborhoods. And so let's move into traffic studies. Engineering, that's been one of the topics. I'm going to go over some of the other topics that have been brought up with discussions with City Council. If there's less than 1,000 trips a day and peak hour and 100 peak hour trips, then the requirement is a memo with basic elements in it just for the traffic, but no traffic impact study, just the basic memo. Number 2, more than 1,000 trips a day and 100 peak hour trips or more, traffic impact study, and that's done by a certified professional engineer with transportation experience. If this new subdivision that's being proposed is 5,000 trips a day or more, traffic impact study and done by a certified traffic engineer. So there's streets. We've gone over street widths. And standard street width, 34 feet. There's an option for a 31 foot. If you have a development that only has 300-foot long streets on between 2 main roads, the fire department is able to go 150 feet with their hoses to the site they need to be to. Then that way you can narrow your street down to 31 feet. They also have 120 trips per day, less than 120 trips per day. Like I say, a connection on both ends, so it's 150 feet from either end. And that way the fire department has access to it and doesn't actually need to have to go down the narrower street. They can do it from the streets on the sides. And then there's a 24-foot option entry road where it requires no parking. Up in, I don't know if you're familiar with it, we have this happened several years ago. Lake Hill subdivision up in the Heights has some pods of housing out in the course. You have to go around the housing on the course. To make those connections into that pod of homes, there's a street and there is golf course on both sides. So we would propose that a street in that scenario where there is nothing developed on either side can be a 24-foot street just to get traffic in and out. But it doesn't need to be the full width. And then there's some other potential street width language that we've worked at. There's a no parking and parking on one side. Staff is recommending this language that be used. Street sections that are fronted on both sides by property that A, does not generate traffic, B, does not require parking, and C, must be signed no parking, may be reduced to 24 feet back of curb to back of curb. For example, again, street through a golf course. Or we have some scenarios actually in the city that we have long entry roads that have no development on either side because they actually bought the property behind it, and that's just an access into it. And so those streets could be 24 feet wide and not be a problem. The other option that we're proposing, street sections that are fronted on one side by property that is A, does not generate traffic, B, does not require parking, and C, must be signed no parking, may be reduced to 29 feet back of curb, back of curb. For example, a street that is fronted on one side by a golf course, so only one side, drainage or ditches. It was also suggested that we include parkland in that, but parkland, they need parking. If any of you have ever experienced Park Hill Road when there's an activity going on at Pioneer Park, it's a nice single lane chute down the road where they signed no parking on both sides of the road, but they're still parked there. So we need the parking for parks to make sure that people have access into parks and are able to get there safely. Is that directed to us?
Just having an offside conversation. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, David.
I couldn't understand the question. Okay. Then we move on to street lighting. This is another proposal that was given. The city uses the American National Standard RP8, which is a basic guideline, and it lays out how far light poles are apart, the lighting that's required, the type of lights that are used, and that's a guideline that the city uses to get the proper lighting and the correct things done with lighting. Options for installation, developer installed, and SILMD for maintenance. Special Improvement District, again with the SILMD for maintenance, or by Northwest Energy. Those are the three options that you have, and the ways of putting in street lights. And I just wanted to, with the proposal of the subdivision regulations, as we've done in other subdivision regulations in the past, a lot of these things are new, and the things that we are trying to do and do that some of the other cities are doing. And in doing so, we also watch to see what's working and what isn't working. And in some cases, things work out great. In other cases, they don't work so good at all. And in those cases, we would be coming back to you for additional information, corrections, changes, possibly removing it completely, so that we make sure that we offer our developers and our community the best possibilities that we can possibly give to them, and not make it so that it's an unchangeable, this is how it happens and that's it, because that doesn't work. Just for your general information, the county has adopted theirs, and we're already seeing a problem with that we will be correcting. But it has nothing to do with your subdivision process at the city, because there are some differences between the county and the city. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, and Mac Fogelsong is here, as well as Mike Pigg from the Parks Department.
Very good. Thank you, David. So council will open up for questions for David. This is a public hearing. Afterwards, so we'll open up for the public's input, and then we'll come back to you, at which point, the way we've often done this is we ask for a base motion to get something on the table, and then we can entertain in more specific amendments if there's a base motion for adoption. I saw Councilmember Boyette's hand first, and then Councilmember Aspenleiter.
Thank you, Mayor. At the very first slide, you showed that there was quite a few public hearings. Mm-hmm. Was there any commonality that came out of all those hearings from the public about what they liked about lighting or not lighting or streets? Was there anything general that came out that you could say, this was a big topic that of the 10 meetings or whatever, people like this or don't like that?
Probably the biggest topic I would say for the city subdivision regulations would be how we're handling streetlights. And what the proposed, street lighting, and how it's being proposed and what would be required and what the costs are. I know that Mac Fogelsong has provided information on that, on costs, as well as Northwest Energy. But that would probably be the biggest one that we saw from the city's subdivision regulations.
So did the public want lighting or did they not want lighting? That would be.
It's a toss-up. Some like it, some don't.
Very good. Councilmember Asseliner and Councilmember Kennedy and Councilmember Gulick.
Thank you, Mayor. Dave, just so I'm clear, and I was following the emails between Councilman Rupsis and Anna, and I talked to Anna briefly this afternoon, but I just want to make sure I'm crystal clear on the road width items. We're not changing our required city road template. We're just saying, if you meet these criteria, you can build a smaller road, but we're not now saying this is the new city template, correct?
Yeah, we're not, this is a new compaction for this one. No, it's the same, just narrower.
Very good. Councilmember Kennedy and Councilmember Gulick.
Yes, my question is, can we put a year limit on that they have up to a year after approval of the subdivision to make sure they have lighting? And the reason I'm asking that is if you ask for everything up front, it will cost the developer $3,750, which will be added onto the price to the homeowner. If you have the time and then Northwestern Energy installs, then it would be billed directly to the homeowner at a monthly charge. Most homeowners stay in their home up to 7 years. By the time they pay off their mortgage, all of that, they will be paying the total cost. I'd like to see it at least the more affordable is the Northwest Energy piece, and that would be able to lessen the upfront cost for the homeowner.
So, Councilmember Kennedy, can I just ask you to kind of restate your question about the 1 year issue?
My question is, instead of having this done at the very beginning, that they'd have up to a year so they can start their subdivision and have property owners being able to pay in to that lighting district? Can we have a year delay before they have to install the lighting? Is that better?
Oh, I see. It wouldn't be a time limit that would accelerate getting it in within a year. It would be a grace period. You could get final subdivision plat approval before having the lights installed, and then you'd have a year after final plat approval to actually do the installation.
Correct. And that way they could go with either whichever they wanted to, but it seems like having to have the money up front when they do the development adds more cost to the homeowner. And I'm trying to defray that cost.
Okay, Dave, maybe you could kind of walk us through the mechanics of how this a mandatory lighting requirement would work. Typically, if you say you've got to have a street built out, for example, the city would not approve final plat approval, which would allow them to sell lots, until the street had been built. And so if we say you have to put in the lights, we wouldn't allow final plat approval. They wouldn't be able to sell lots until the lights were put in. Councilmember Kennedy is suggesting They could get final plat approval, they could sell the lots, but they would have, if I understand correctly, an additional year to put in the lighting. If you want to comment on that concept.
Correct.
I'll work on part of it, and then I'm going to pass it to Mac for a follow-up. I think you're right in the fact that we do require people to put in their infrastructure. Street, sidewalk, curb and gutters, all that. Not the sidewalks are built with the construction of the house for the first 5 years. And after 5 years, the city has the option to go and do it for them. That's in your standard agreements. But in order to delay it for a year, you would still have to put in everything but the light pole itself to do it. Because if you did it a year later and went in and trenched everybody's yard on this particular street, poured concrete, laid conduit and things like that, I think you might find that your costs are going to be higher retro than they are initial.
And Mac Fogelson is coming to the podium, our city engineer, to also comment.
Yeah, Councilmember Kennedy, Mayor and Council. So a couple of thoughts come to mind. One, I guess a developer could guarantee their improvements to file their plat, so they're actually not installing those at final plat. A 1 year, so there's another thing that might come into play, which might be a benefit to this 1 year delay. I'm trying to weigh the pros and cons. We have some projects right now, say in Annafeld subdivision, where they're doing an SID to put the streetlights in, and just the time to create the SID and work through that process has probably been taking about a year. So that might be a benefit for that process. So I'm not seeing a lot of downsides to that. The caveat would be that maybe those are either done by SID or financially guaranteed to file the plat. But that's the same with improvements as they are, so.
Okay, so if I can paraphrase what you said about the SID, if the developer says we will do an SID for street lighting, they can still get final plat approval, they can still move ahead with construction, but the natural SID process will extend out the payment process at that point.
And that might be a developer choice, but they're making that choice, if you will, with that in mind. And if it does cost them a little more, I mean, that's their choice, I guess.
Okay, and if the developer puts it in, there's going to be built into the cost of the lot. And if it's an SID, then it would kind of automatically be a monthly cost unless somebody wanted to pay off the SID in advance. Okay, we'll move ahead if Councilmember Kennedy, you're okay with that and didn't have any other follow-up. Thumbs up. Okay, very good. I'd recognize Councilmember Gulick and Councilmember Nice. You had your hand up? No, Councilmember Gulick.
Yes, I appreciate staff's attention to the subject of street widths. I think Councilmember Roops has had some good, just minor corrections or clarifying things. I support those as well. Typically it's good practice for us to have parking on both sides of the street. And so, our typical street width is good. I mean, I was in the minority that argued for something a little narrower, but I lost that one. That's okay. There are a few scenarios I can think of in addition to what's been mentioned. So if there's, again, not a really good practice, I don't know if that's still being done, but if you have a lot of driveways that are really close together going to a street, there's no way you can have on-street parking there. And then if you have a 34-foot wide street, then that's when you have people driving 45 miles an hour down it. And so one thought I had, and I apologize that I didn't suggest this language earlier, but on page 52 in there, we have that section that we added about the street widths and the exceptions for allowing it to be narrower. We have, it says, street sections that are fronted by property that does not generate traffic does not require parking I would say does not require or allow for parking must be signed, no parking, and can be reduced to 24 feet. I'll back up. It's a question. Does our current zoning allow a situation where you just have a bunch of driveways going on to a street? Is that a scenario that can happen under our current zoning?
That would be with subdivision, and the way zoning doesn't get involved in access points. So it'd be engineering that would provide access permits to get onto streets. Is that correct?
And is that a scenario that can occur currently?
I think, Councilmember Gulick, a good question. I think theoretically, yes, but I'm thinking back to, somewhere where that may have occurred. I don't see that being a practical thing that would occur. I don't see that scenario, like very low probability.
Okay. I can think of a scenario where we had a bunch of townhouses that, actually, we designed them, on 26th Street that, right behind Albertsons on 27th and on 6th. And so there wasn't any room for on-street parking in that scenario. So it does seem like just even broadening the scenarios in which you would be able, it would be good practice actually to narrow it further. I would suggest that we add that language.
By that language, you mean or allow?
Yes, allow for or allow for.
Okay. Other questions? Councilmember Rupsis.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to stick on that same topic, Dave, we provide some examples in the language of, ditches or golf courses, those type of things. Those are not exclusive, right? Those are just examples. There can be plenty of other opportunities. What you're really talking about are just the criteria for what you'll evaluate.
Right, so those are just, you're correct.
And for the record, I completely agree with you with things like Pioneer Park and those types of things. My thought was, we do have some parks that are more, say, natural parks, say like Cameron Park up off of Rimrock Road, where there wouldn't necessarily be any traffic going to that area, and it's really only on one side of the road. So that was kind of my example with a park. So the conditions as they're written right now wouldn't exclude something like that. If you would look at the plan and say, okay, well, yeah, we see this is kind of a special case, and yes, it's a park, but we don't expect it to drive any traffic, and we're okay with that.
Yes, yeah, those are just two quick examples. That doesn't it's not exclusive.
Very good, thank you.
David, could you bring up your the table that shows the street width chart? That's table 23-406, B1. It was part of the original presentation that you had there.
We don't have that on a slide. Is it an attachment on your memo?
Yeah. Memo and then the attachment. With the whole set. Scroll down.
And I can describe my question generally, but it'll make a lot more sense if people actually can see in front. For council members, this is the graph that appears at page 52. That was a topic of some email discussion back and forth about road widths before. While they're looking to bring that up, why don't I take a stab at it? And David, I think you'll understand. The slide that you had up before showed some a revised language that's different from what was in our packet. It came out of conversations that Councilmember Ripsis, issues he had raised by email. And I thought that the language you had in your slide was a big improvement. But in a nutshell, it conditions these variants to go down to a 24 or 29 street or width street on three different conditions. That they're not generate, that the property adjacent not generate traffic, and not require parking, for example. And my question for you is whether the understanding or definition of property in that situation is sufficiently clear. One of the examples there we go, is a golf course. So I'll use that. So at the bottom of that page is a golf course. And so my point is that every golf course generates traffic. Every golf course, I assume, requires parking. And so it's nonsensical if by property we mean the golf course. Because they all require this, that you'd never be able to get this variance. My understanding, I'm putting words in your mouth, but my understanding is that the planning department in drafting this didn't mean the whole golf course. They meant the piece of property that is of the golf course that is immediately adjacent to the right-of-way. I'm just a little concerned when it says the property, and normally or oftentimes we'll talk about the parcel. So if any part of the parcel generates traffic or requires parking, sorry, you don't get the variance. In my perfect world, that would be clarified to define what part of the property, what part of the golf course you're actually talking about. I guess my suggestion would be that we not hold this up. We don't want to get into drafting with 14, 15 people. We could just approve this, but I guess my suggestion is if you agree, or if staff agrees, and if our legal counsel, who is used to drafting stuff, agrees, that we give it back to you to massage that language and to be more specific about what you mean by the property. And that's my point. Is my point clear? You got any objection? I'm looking also at our Deputy City Attorney, Todd Korn, also for his interpretation of this, whether the property is clear enough or whether we should ask you to work on that and bring it back to us at second reading for some cleanup on that issue. And I would ask Councilmember Rupsis, he raised some other issues. Are you okay with the proposed language, Councilmember Rupsis, or is there anything else if council wanted to instruct staff to clean that up, that else they should be doing, or are we okay?
I'm okay with it, and I like Councilmember Gulick's suggestion, but at this point, let staff take care of that.
Yeah, so if Dave or other staff, you get any problems with Councilmember Gulick's suggestion to add or allow, do not require or allow parking, is that okay? Allow for?
Yeah, allow. That's the physical limitation as opposed to a posted limitation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so allow for parking. I don't have any, we're fine with that.
And how about with the issue I raised? Is staff okay with that?
Clarify property, what that means.
Yeah, what you mean by the property, because now it just talks about a golf course, but every golf course, I think, triggers traffic and requires parking.
But we're fine with that.
Todd, you got any comments on that suggestion?
Mayor, I think your point is well taken. It's unclear to me as I read it in the same fashion I think it's unclear to you just exactly what it means to say that the property doesn't generate traffic. I think a more specific some more specific wording, perhaps property that adjoins the particular street section at issue or something. There could be some better language used.
Okay. And hopefully it wouldn't be a problem having it come back on second reading if that was the will of the council.
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay. Okay, we trying to think where we're at on here. We have not had a public hearing, but we're kind of in the factual questions for staff stage. Further kind of fact questions for staff. Councilmember Owen, Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. David, I'm not sure if you can answer this question or if you want to pass this one off to Wyeth, but as you probably know, for the last couple of years, the governor has had a housing task force that has issued a number of reports. The Phase 2 report included a number of recommendations to municipalities on streamlining processes, and there were a couple in there that specifically spoke to subdivision review. Do you believe that this draft in front of us, does it address any of them? Does it consider any of them? Does it comply with them? Could you just kind of give your perspective on that? And if you want to kick that to Wyeth, feel free.
Councilmember Owen and Mayor and Council, I would say that knowing what, those recommendations have been, that part of, obviously some of what we're changing is legislative, so they already told us we had to change it. And that was, like, if you look at the administrative review for minors and some of those things, that is more so increasing, if it, moving things forward. Same with the expedited, both the administrative review and the non-public hearing requirement for phasing. So those are already things that the legislature has said, yes, we want to address. Some of that was discussed by the housing, the task force. And I think even with going over to full electronic submittals and stuff like that. So we've got several things that are addressing that. And I think we're on that track. Obviously, when we get into some of the big pieces of the new Montana Land Use Planning Act, that also has elements of it as well in terms of administrative reviews versus going through some of the processes we have now. So I think we're on the track to go that direction.
So some of
those,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Some of these things where it talks about expedited sufficiency review and all of that, you feel like that's incorporated adequately?
Yeah, and some of the, to be honest, some of the things that we do here are a lot faster than other places in the state. And that gets, there's always the one solution fits all, but we already are doing some of that. So we've already got some good things in place even before this, but then now we're going to have some more changes too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mayor.
Good. Thank you, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree with some of the changes on this parking. I think direct access, something like that to define that. But David, as I read through this, this is a new trend, and there's always going to be new trends. But right now, there's a trend for tiny homes. Where does that fit in this subdivision requirements? They're building them now. I've heard Livingston's got a big factory. They're going to start pushing them out to communities. Where would tiny homes fit within this?
Tiny homes are allowed, but the subdivision regulation does not regulate them. That falls under zoning. Zoning is the one that would regulate that. So we do have some subdivisions in the past that have got very small lots, and they're putting smaller homes on them that are maxing out at about 1,000 square feet.
So this current subdivision would allow for a bunch of small little
It would allow for
teeny lots with
and with the zoning,
tiny homes.
Combined with the zoning, yes, it would allow for small lots.
Okay, great. Mayor, if you don't mind, I have a couple questions. And I've talked about this before on those cut-through sidewalks that go from one subdivision to another subdivision. I noticed throughout this subdivision ordinance that certain sections referred to another section of the code, saying that, it's explained further there. And I feel when we talk about these cut-throughs, we're not letting the subdivision know that, hey, by the way, when you do these cut-throughs, we need to have certain requirements in the see-through fencing, lower fencing, and unobstructed views of these cut-throughs so they're safer. Is there any way that you can add something within that cut-through section to refer it back to something else because that's what I've heard is you have to refer it back to another section, to refer it back to another code in the city to say this is kind of what it's going to be addressed. When you do these cut-throughs, this is how you're going to have to develop them.
Problem I fall back with is that we don't deal with vertical on subdivision.
Should reference something, yeah.
Councilmember Neeson, Mayor and Council, just talking with Dave for a minute. We don't have, so the subdivision regs are one thing and there's specific criteria for those. Safety is one of them. It's very broad, but you still have to be kind of careful about what you do there. You've been through a couple of subdivisions, including one not too long ago, where we had a lot of discussion because we had proposed some conditioning regarding SEPTED principles for visibility and lower fences and stuff. I think you have to, I don't think it's impossible in some cases, but I think we have to figure out more concretely where we're going with that and what we can reference. Because there's nothing right now that you go to and say, the city's adopted, SEPTED principles, and so yes, you will do it this way. That doesn't exist. We have requirements in zoning for fences, but it's heights and clear vision and such. It's not, it has to be lower here and higher there and such. So I think we'd have to look at where we would actually solidly go to something like that. We don't have a specific spot aside from saying we're trying to improve safety. We could potentially propose a condition, but I think you get into a little murky area there.
I guess the question is when this gets developed, because it sounds to me like we don't have that developed yet. It's going to probably be in the fence code, if I understood. Before they said, well, we'll have to put it in the fencing code. Is that where it's going to be? And is that the most logical place to put something like that so that when you're looking at your fencing code, you say, if you're building a fence within the cut through, this is the requirements of the fence in the cut through. If that's the case, why don't we just update this code now to say, look at the fencing code for your cut throughs, because eventually they're going to be added. That way you don't have to change the ordinance now.
Councilmember Neese, Mayor and Council, I think the challenge is obviously we don't have that, we don't have a place to specifically reference, and I'm not positive that it would just be in the fence regulations. I think we would really need to look at if we're going to have some SEPTED, specific requirements or call outs where we say this is the things that the city, is adopting, has adopted, and here's where you have to do it. So I wouldn't be confident enough to say, yep, it's going to be where we talk about fence construction.
Okay. All right, thank you. And Mary, I have one last question.
Okay.
Dave, we hear a lot about affordable homes, and we hear a lot of developers talking about, lighting costs are going to be more expensive. We're adding a few other things within this, more than what the state is asking us to do, or telling us to do, actually. So do you believe this code is really lowering the cost of housing? Is it making housing more affordable? Is this new code with any additional changes, is it helping to make housing more affordable?
I don't, personally, that's my opinion, I don't know, I don't believe it's making it more affordable, but I don't think it's making it outrageously expensive either. It's not raising the costs enough to be noticeable in a market system where a lot of times the price of a lot is driven by market, not by the developer. He has his certain price point he needs to hit, but for some reason that same lot is selling for, he needs to get 60,000 minimum for it, but they're selling for 80,000, so he's going to sell them for 80.
Okay, so that answered my questions, because what I heard you say is that it doesn't raise it significantly, so it does raise it, so
It
thank
does raise
you.
it a tiny bit,
Thank
but
you.
it does significant.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I wanted to, this is, I don't know if you could have an answer to this, but if you look at street lighting and the costs that generates, what percentage of that cost is overall what the person is going to have to pay for their home? If they're buying a $300,000 home and the requirement is for street lighting, that doesn't seem, this is my question to you, is that a high percentage of the overall cost of a home if someone is buying it?
Just 1 second.
One 1%. The question then, and this is higher level, when we look at our cost of services, and if you were comparing cost benefits to street lighting, and you're looking at our big picture in terms of public safety, where would you think lighting would fall if you had lighting kind of versus hiring police officers or something more broadly representative of public safety? Thank you. That's a very open-ended question. It could be interpreted quite a few different ways. But what I'm driving at, if your house is 1% more expensive versus us hiring more police officers, more patrol cars, more tough books, how do you see that? Thank you.
I believe that it would cost you more to hire people. If you can put lighting in that's going to help reduce just naturally crime, rather than having the police getting calls constantly and having to hire more police to cover those calls, I believe in the long run you would save money by having someone pay a little bit for lighting versus paying maybe substantially more for 30 more police officers, cars, hard books, or whatever they call their computers. And so I think that your costs for police officers would be, and it would be a cost that was always going up at a rate that may be quite a bit higher than maybe your well, what did it have? The last time we had this here, cost per month was $25 for the light.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions for Dave before we have our public hearing? Okay, don't want to cut you off. We'll have an opportunity later. Thanks, Dave. We'll open it up for public comment. This is a public hearing on item number 4, the proposed first reading on the proposed revisions to our subdivision regulations. If anybody would like to comment, please come forward. Just tell us who you are, address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Dan Brooks with the Billings Chamber at 815 South 27th Street. I think this is the 4th time I've come before you to advocate and ask for your yay vote on the subdivision lighting regulations, so I won't be too long-winded, but do just want to briefly remind you of some of the stuff that we talked about. One, the 2021 National Police Services Survey that the city conducted garnered almost 1,000 responses that seem to indicate that about a quarter of our population does not feel safe in their neighborhoods at night. That, some back-of-the-napkin math would suggest that's about 20,000, 23,000 people who don't feel safe in their neighborhoods at night. And a lot of them also indicated that they don't believe that they have adequate lighting in their neighborhoods. So this would not address our existing neighborhoods, right? This is new subdivisions, but I think it's important that we build safety into our community. You also heard not only from myself incessantly about SEPTED, but from Officer Nate West about the need for not just more lighting, but good lighting, right? That it needs to be shielded. It needs to put the light where it belongs rather than, say, just as a lamppost in a yard. So having that appropriate standard ensures that good lighting is getting put into these neighborhoods to protect those citizens and make them feel safe where they live. Last thing that I would mention, echoing Councilwoman Owen from the August 5th meeting, talking about, this is something that we need to do, but we also need to look at how do we decrease that cost of building? How do we find efficiencies in the permitting, in the inspections processes, wherever we can find those reductions in time, reductions in money to our builders, and we're happy to help on that. In fact, next Thursday, we're hosting a meeting of city staff, interested legislators, some members of council, and if you're not on that already, I'm happy to add you. But to have a discussion with the Department of Labor and Industry about how they utilize remote virtual inspections for their inspections of builders. So that's authorized here in the state of Montana, but I think we need to get that discussion going, and we're going to start that next Thursday. So anyway, again, encourage your yes vote on at least the lighting portion of the subdivision regulations, and offer ourselves up to help in any way that we can to talk about making building more efficient. So thank you.
Very good, thank you. Other public comment on this item, please come forward.
Good evening, Council. Elizabeth Shoemaker with the Home Builders Association of Billings, 1645 Avenue D. Also, side note, I am a realtor. So I sell houses that you guys talk about, and just wanted to, I have the concern, of course, of the cost to the buyer and also the builder. Those costs seem to be ever increasing. I know that you guys have voted recently on a raise to in builders permits, so there's that. There's also that 15% increase in to Public Works for the water fee. So, and then there's of course the 30% increase in property taxes. So all that combined raises our cost of living substantially. The cost of average cost of a home, I just looked it up today, and for September of 2024 is $385,000. The least expensive home I've seen that's a new construction is probably around $380,000. So it's not like they're not trying to create homes that are affordable, or at least the median price home. In order to afford a home like that, you have to make approximately $136,000 per year. So that sets a lot of people out of the market, prices a lot of people out of the market. And the more you increase that price of that home, the more people get priced out. And that's even for the little stuff that gets added on and added on. It always goes back to the homeowner. It goes sometimes directly back to the homeowner. There are options. I see that you have options for the lighting, but they all go back to the homeowner. And we might say, oh, it's only $24 a month, but that's going to add up. And Northwestern Energy owns those lights in that situation. Some builders would like the freedom of being able to install their own lighting fixtures, and they do that. There's lots of builders. It's not like they're out there building homes that aren't, safe or they don't factor. It's not like they don't factor that in. They do. They might have a different way of going about doing that. So I think that and the HBA has this general consensus that having this added regulation on lighting is not going to help the situation with affordable housing in general. So I would ask you to reconsider voting yes on that mandate, and maybe find a better way of that solving that issue with lighting. I don't know. I think that's the main concern is the cost of housing. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment on this item number 4, please come to the podium. And go ahead and make a little line back there if there's anybody else who'd like to comment. That way we know and we'll save a little time on transition.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is John Halverson. I live at 239 Avenue F, which the curb to curb there is 31 feet. And it's great. People have to drive slowly down my street. And I think it's great for the kids who like to ride bikes on there and stuff. So adds a lot, and I won't be moving from there if I can avoid it. Just in terms of some of the details on here, well, I guess I'm not going to start with the details. I'm going to start with the big picture, I guess, because in our last conversation about this in a working session, we were talking a lot about, the the curb widths and things like that. And so I contacted the county health department, and from 2009 to 2018, leading cause of death injuries for Montanans age 1 to 44 was unintentional transportation deaths. So let's make sure that our subregs do two things, right? Go after that cause of death by making things slow. And I think when I say slow, I mean the speed limit, making sure that like your normal driver who's not like a, thrill seeker is driving the speed limit, that the design of the road incents them to drive the speed limit. And I think there are some details, some new text in there that does that. That's really great. So, and I would point out that there on Marillac from King to Henry Chapel is a 15-foot curb to curb. There's a very wide median through there that creates that. And then on either side of that, there is commercial real estate that does generate traffic. Avenue D from 15th to 13th is a 22-foot curb to curb with no parking along the park. And I drive through there and I don't think it's unsafe. I think it's quite lovely. And it's something that we see in communities all over the place. I have all kinds of precedents if you're interested. And then in terms of let's see here, the block lengths, there's a section in this in the subregs that call out a different block length for every zone, which is, I think, not the purpose of creating block lengths, right? Blocks, when we lay out blocks and streets in the transportation grid of our city, we're making century decisions. Those things are not going to move. So, zoning changes much more frequently than street locations. So I would say that we should be creating blocks that are, and some of the block lengths are, like for CMU 1, the proposed block length is 1,400 feet. For reference, the Walmart lot is 1,200 feet deep, so bigger than the existing Walmart lot there. So, and then in terms of sidewalks, 23406B 13 says that, we can do streets, but maybe you can put the sidewalk somewhere else if you so choose. And as a planner, I'm always thinking about not me, the 6'2", 200-pound guy walking down the street. I'm thinking about the little lady who needs to walk for a useful trip. And so if her decision is to either walk in the street or walk in a back sidewalk where there's no lighting, I don't think we should be setting that up. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on item number 4? Any other public comment on item number 4? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on item number 4. Back to council. Councilmember Rasmussen.
Having conducted a public hearing, consider written and spoken testimony, I move to approve first reading ordinance amending city subdivision regulations as recommended by staff.
Second by Councilmember Rupsis. Motion is approval consistent with the staff recommendation. Councilmember Rasmussen, Councilmember Rupsis, you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I agree, and I've been very squishy about the streetlight issue, and I think as we had our work sessions, we talked about it at length. We continue to add incremental regulations and incremental steps and more cost, and every time we do that, we talk about the cost of housing, but we also say, yeah, we'll get together and we'll look at some things that we can improve. But we never do that, actually. I'm going to support this, but I'm going to ask the city administrator, because we've talked about this before. I want a firm commitment that we are going to get together and look at our building regulations, our permit timelines, and how we can really work to expedite getting things done in this city and reducing some of the regulation. The real cost here, from my perspective, with a lot of development, is the carry cost that we unintendedly drive up on developments because our permit timelines drag. A lot of times that's with the building department. It comes not necessarily because we're going to add streetlights and the cost of that, but it really comes with our building codes and our building permitting timelines. That's not addressed in the subdivision regulations, and it's not the proper place to do that. But but I'm asking and I'm looking for a firm commitment that we're actually going to do that. We talked about that early in the summer, but when do we actually get to that point? And I'm going to look for a firm commitment from you that we're really going to actually do it. And if we aren't, then I'm going to bring an initiative to force us to do it, because I think that's really how we start to try to address our housing costs, is not in the subdivision regulations, it's really in the building permit side of things. So can we get that commitment?
Councilmember Aspenlighter, Mayor and Council, yes. We've had, I believe it's been no fewer than 3 meetings, 2 internal and the 3rd including our Regional Economic Development Group, who is going to facilitate the dialogues with the industry and the internal service providers for what I hear you talking about, both hard and soft cost. There's hard infrastructure components, but it's not just about that, time being money. What can be done. And so Big Sky Economic Development has been asked to help us in that regard so that the city isn't the one just kind of facilitating that discussion between our regulators and our developers, builders. And this fall, which we're essentially there, those meetings are being scheduled.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Rupsis, you had the second. Did you want to address the motion? Okay, very good. You have a motion on the table, Council. How do you want to proceed? Any further discussion on the motion? The motion is for approval as drafted. I'm sorry, Councilmember Kennedy and Councilmember Neese?
I would amend the motion for approval to add that we give the developer a year so they can go ahead and sell their lots and before the lights are installed.
Okay, motion, as I understand it, would be to change the regulations to not require installation for final plat approval, but an additional year after that. Is there a second? Is there a second? Councilmember Aspenlighter?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask Councilman Kennedy a friendly suggestion to modify that a little bit? Would it be acceptable to you if we allowed for financial guarantee to allow that for 12 months?
Yes.
Then if that's acceptable, I'll second that.
And if I can just ask you to clarify, so you're saying developer gets final plat approval,
But can provide a financial guarantee for 12 months to assure that a lighting plan, whether it's an SID or developer funded, is installed.
so the completion would be allowed with a year after, as long as there was the substantial or the financial guarantee, which I think would probably happen anyway, but just clarifying that. I heard that question. I did not hear a second. Is there? So Councilmember Aspenlighter makes the second. Okay, so on that, with that understanding, Councilmember Rupsis?
Maybe if I could just ask Councilmember Kennedy or Aspenlighter, what section or text are you specifically looking to adjust or amend? I'm trying to figure out where that would fit in the regulations, and I mean, maybe what we just need is for staff to bring back a proposal for next time, but I'm not seeing what we're looking to change.
So Councilor Kennedy, I don't know if you can quote chapter and verse, but if so, please do.
I can. I'm looking for it right now. What this ordinance would do is make a requirement that you have to have the street lighting as you have the approval. And I'm just trying to delay that so the homeowners then can have it. They can do the SID, or they can have Northwest Energy be able to, they can contract out and pay monthly to Northwest Energy. In this ordinance, it states that there just is that a lighting would be required. And I would like to give, as Councilman Aspenliner said, that we would give them a year delay with financial assurances.
Okay, so Councilor Rips, I didn't hear a specific location. That would have to be left to staff. So Councilor Absalon,
I think I have it. It's under, 14. So it would be,
Can you grab your mic, Councilman Wrestling?
sorry. It would be section B under 14 streetlights. And then there's A, subsection A, new street lighting.
are you on a page that you can reference?
It looks like 46.
46.
46.
Okay. This is all in section 23-406?
I'm looking at the subdivision regulations ordinance.
Oh, gotcha. You're looking. Thank you. Okay, yeah. So you're looking at the clean version.
Yeah.
Page 46 in the clean version. Okay.
And so it would be under 14A, and you would have to add a 5, essentially, or a B, yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So that's the proposed amendment. Discussion now on the proposed amendment. Councilmember Joy and Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have a question for Dan Fogelsong, Mr. Fogelsong. When you approached and said that you thought that might not be difficult because this process for setting up a special district for streetlights is quite a long process, and maybe 1 year isn't a bad thing. And you mentioned a financial guarantee. What does that financial guarantee look like? Because what I'm hearing is this is a suggestion to save costs so that the lots can be sold. But if there's a financial guarantee with it, how does I'm not sure how that actually reduces the burden in terms of for the developer. So what kind of guarantee would it take in order to accomplish that? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I understand the question, Councilmember Joy. So I don't know what the benefit of saving cost. I can't speak to that. I don't know that would be true with the delay. The financial guarantee would be simple. So we already have in the current subdivision regulations and these new subdivision regulations that a developer has to construct the improvements, the streets, the curbs, the water, the sewer, before final plat approval. Or if they want to record their final plat, they have to guarantee those improvements. So they usually use a letter of credit or some other financial mechanism to guarantee those. So I think what we're talking about was, in addition to the street, the water, the sewer, if they want to file their final plat, they would also then add a chunk of guarantee financially for streetlights. So that if, and the why behind that is, let's say they record the plat, the developer disappeared for some reason, we could act on that security, if you will, to install those improvements so that there wouldn't be homeowners without improvements.
Okay, Councilmember Owen?
Mac, if this is already in regs, there's always a lot of admonition up here on the dais about drafting amendments on the fly, which is exactly what we're doing. What I'm hearing you say is maybe the guarantee needs to go somewhere else because it's already in the regs. So if I look here at page 58 of the red line version, it looks like that's exactly the language you're referring to that says facilities have to be done before final plat approval, or there has to be a financial guarantee. So I'm a little concerned that maybe we're creating a duplication and maybe we need to draft this a little more artfully. Do you have a specific idea exactly where this needs to go? Or would it be better to bring a more thoughtful amendment back on second reading?
I think it would be, if lighting is an improvement that's required, and this might be a city attorney question, but improvements, if lighting is a required improvement, that would probably fall under the security guarantee that we already have listed elsewhere.
And actually, I apologize, Mayor, as I'm word searching the document, we actually reference it multiple times and might need to make multiple conforming amendments throughout the statute. So, the regulation. I just want to make sure that we're doing something that has effect. Do you know what I'm saying?
Correct.
So Mac, if I can follow up on that.
Yeah,
if you
go
were
ahead,
done.
Mayor.
So to get final plat approval, it allows you to sell lots. You either got to put the actual street light in there, or you got to put up money that says there will be money to construct that. What's the time limit if you only put up the financial guarantee for the actual construction? Because if we are requiring construction of the street light within 1 year, maybe what we're actually accomplishing is exactly the opposite of what Councilmember Kennedy is proposing. We're speeding up the construction of those street lights when under our current regulations they'd have more than a year. What's that deadline for construction with a financial guarantee?
I think technically it would be preliminary plat expiration, right? Is that I don't have those at my.
You see the kind of obvious problems, so maybe Wyeth can comment, Councilmember Owen?
Well, Mayor, to your point, again, doing a very sloppy word search, the existing language of what's already in regulations suggests that letters of credit must be renewed annually, which would suggest much more than a 12-month period.
If you get permission at least to renew.
Correct.
So you'd have that
So
option.
our regulations
potentially.
must conceive of a.
So at least you get a year, so we're not gaining anything, we might be losing something.
That would be fair.
Councilmember Absalom, you want to comment on this issue?
And I'd ask Councilman Kennedy, I think there probably is some merit here to have staff take a look at that, you understand the crux of what we're asking. If there needs to be an amendment to fit that, can you draft something like that up that could be considered that hits it in the appropriate places so that we're clean in doing this and we address it kind of wholesale through the document, and we can consider that on second reading. Councilmember Kennedy, would you be okay with that?
Yes, I would be. The concern that I have is on the table 1 on residential streetlight options for installation, that if the developer were forced into the upfront costs, the upfront cost goes directly on the homeowner. Even though the homeowner will pay over a period of years for it, there is an opportunity for the cost to either be an SID or to be provided service by Northwest Energy, which would be at a monthly cost. Most homeowners have a tough time coming up with the 20% to buy the home, and then if you keep on increasing that, it keeps on increasing what it's costing, upfront costs to get into home ownership. So I'm up for any solution to be able to help the homeowner get into the home.
Okay, I think we've got two issues here. Councilor Aspenleiter, I think you were asking whether he was withdrawing his motion.
Yeah, I'm revoking my second. So if we can withdraw the amendment, that would be great.
I will withdraw it.
Okay, very good. That solves that problem. Councilmember Kennedy, though, also raised an issue, if I interpreted his comment correctly, to suggest that top of page 54, which is the mandatory streetlight requirement, streetlight, and I'm quoting here, streetlights shall be installed within residential subdivisions. He was interpreting that to require that the subdivider do the actual installation. My interpretation from the staff report is staff doesn't care how they get there, they just have to get there somehow. And so that staff's interpretation is contrary to Councilmember Kennedy's. The Northwestern Energy option, the SID option are very much on the table, but I think we need to make that crystal clear that that is the city's interpretation of this first line that says streetlights shall be installed within the residential subdivision. That does not eliminate what Councilmember Kennedy was proposing as an option, namely monthly payments to Northwestern Energy, et cetera. Wyeth, can you just comment to make sure on the record that it's clear that those are also options? It doesn't have to just go in upfront and be worked into the cost of the home because it's being done by the subdivider.
So Mayor and Council, first, before I go there, with the withdrawal of the amendment, are you still expecting us to come back with new language about how this is going to work differently than what we've already got in the regs? Because if the answer is no, we're done, then I can try and answer this, but that would be great.
I think what my expectation is you understand the intent of the question. If there are things that need to change by looking at that, then please let's address it at that second reading. If there are not, then let's talk about it at second reading and move on. That's my expectation.
So Mayor and Council, I feel like we're in two different places here. So as you just stated, Mayor, the development has to have, if you pass this and require streetlights in residential areas and subdivisions, they have to have lighting. You can't wait, say, oh, nothing's required, a year goes by, and then the neighbors decide they're gonna create a SID or whatever. You have to have all that figured out, either at final plat, you secure it, and then through private contract, et cetera, you get it done. So I just want to make sure it's really clear. This isn't, if you don't want, you either are going to have lighting or you're not going to have lighting. There's not a, now, for example, in an existing neighborhood, yeah, like where I live, let's say, if I wanted to have lighting now, then yeah, I would have to go through one of those processes also. But it's not the same as with the subdivision where they're completing it and we have to make sure that it's getting done as part of that process, whether it's, secured, done right away, whatever those choices are. So I just want to make sure that's clear. This isn't going to, there's nothing in here that's, necessarily doing something different with the future property owner, aside from that they are going to pay for the lights in one way or another. So I just want to make sure that's clear, because I feel like we're in two different places.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. It has to happen, but I think the question was, staff is not saying that it has to be done one way or the other. In other words, it just has to be done, and that may be construction by the developer, or it may be consent to the creation of an SID by the developer, or the consent of a district or paid installed by Northwestern Energy by the developer. One way or another, it has to be established by the developer in order as currently drafted.
Correct.
Okay. Councilmember Owen, Councilmember Neese?
So, whoa, hang on, Wyeth. I actually think I just heard an answer that was different than what I expected. So what you're saying, and if I'm looking here at section 23501, the guarantee of public improvements language, what you're saying is that lighting will be adopted in our regs, and all improvements, traffic, water, sewer, lighting, will have to be done before final plat or guaranteed. So we don't need anything to accomplish what Councilmember Kennedy wants. That is inherent in the structure of the regs.
Well, I guess Councilmember Owen and Mayor and Council, what I'm concerned about is what Councilmember Kennedy is talking about somehow trying to defer or affect the cost to the property owner. This is ensuring that the lighting gets installed like you just described. It's not about somehow delaying to save them money or anything. It's however that mechanism is to create it is when they're going to pay for the lights.
But so conceivably, if they wanted to begin selling lots while still finalizing an agreement with Northwestern Energy, they could do that so long as they guaranteed it.
Right. Yeah, no, right.
So what Councilmember Kennedy wants to do, at least in structure, exists. Whether or not that saves money, you're disputing. But the structure of you can have time to resolve whatever makes most sense for the development is inherent in the regulations.
That's right.
Got it.
Secure, yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Neese. Further discussion, and then Councilmember Ripsis.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate the discussion on that last point because it made it clearer for me. So I do have a question for someone. I don't know who. So one of the things we're adopting here is this American National Standard of Practice of Roadway Lighting, RP8. And I understand maybe for arterial streets, collector streets, but we're talking about the local streets here. And I want to make sure, when we're looking at what is the option for the developers to put in, we understand the city option SIDs and the Northwest Energy, but what about the residential developer doing that? Can that be done with just having every house they develop, they put in a street light, a little 6-foot street light right out in front of their property, and that's enough? Is that going to be enough? Is that considered meeting these RP 8 standards?
Councilmember Neese, so couple points. My gut says no, but without, there's some sort of minimum lighting levels, if you will, in that code, and they are stepped down. I want to be clear. That code covers arterials, collectors, local. It also has some breakdowns with respect to pedestrian levels. So, the high intensity arterials with many pedestrians, say downtown, higher level of lighting, down the chain with local level. What I can't tell you is maybe there's some amount of light that you could, I don't think that it's probably possible, but someone would have to do a design to figure that out.
Okay, so when you're talking about developer installation, you're talking about a developer installation of large light poles up and down the street that everyone is going to have to pay into through a HOA. It's not going to be controlled by the homeowners personally or individually. It's still going to add that 1% to the home cost. It's just going to be paid by the developer, and it's going to be controlled somehow through the HOA.
Well, I'm talking about a public improvement that generally with the first two options there, either developer installed or through an SID. So the initial construction cost would be by one of those two methods. And then we would set up, just like we have in the rest of the city, a special improvements maintenance district that would, once the construction cost sunsets in an SID, that pays for, power and maintenance of those, bulb replacement, those kinds of things. So generally, at least as written, it's not on an HOA, it's in a district.
So you're anticipating even if the developer improves it, it's still going to be a city SID on their property to repay the developer back for their development?
No, not necessarily. So if it was developer installed, developer would install those, pay the cost to install the lights, the poles. We would then set up that special improvement lighting district to pay for maintenance costs.
Just the maintenance and cost of electricity. So those would probably be fairly inexpensive because they've already got the pole paid for through the purchase of their lot. That's correct. But they are going to be then managed by the city after that.
That's correct.
So there really isn't a locally controlled option for the homeowner to have his own light out there or HOA to have a regulation in with their homeowners association to make sure everyone has a light out by the street to light up their property or the street or the sidewalks.
Not in this scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion. Councilor Ripsis.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to ask where we are with the street widths. We just had some minor word tweaking, and it sounded like staff was okay with them. Do we need a motion to move that forward, or is that just something staff is
Councilor
going to
Ripsis,
bring?
I would say we do, because the motion was to be approved as drafted, and those are not part of the draft.
Okay, but we don't have the language that you specifically were looking for related to
Correct. So
that property.
my recommendation, I'm putting words in your mouth, would be not to specify specific language, but to direct staff to work on addressing those issues that was discussed earlier, in particular to define what's meant by property, and come back on second reading with a modification, but not to approve specific language at this time.
All right. I would make that motion.
Okay.
You want? All right, so I'd ask staff to make bring back suggested changes as per our discussion related to the street widths tonight, having to do with the definition of property, a couple other things, Councilmember Gulick's suggestion, just the little things that we talked about tonight.
Okay. Well,
No, we don't.
No, yeah, we don't actually have any proposed amendment on the floor at this point. So it's just a condition on the approval, so it's, yeah, I think we do need clarification on that. So is there a second to that? Yes, I second that. Any discussion before we just vote on that? Okay, I don't see any discussion, so if in favor of Councilmember Rupes' motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. So Councilmember Kennedy voting nay, all others voting in favor, so that's now part of the underlying motion. Other amendments and other discussion?
Councilmember Kennedy has his hand up.
Councilmember Kennedy.
I'm going to say over this lighting district, you know, it's all over the board. I will be voting against the ordinance tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Further discussion? Councilmember Neese?
Since we're getting ready to vote, I am going to vote against this ordinance. I believe when we look at putting these ordinances together, we need to look for ways to keep things costs down. A 1% increase in houses throughout, you know, these new subdivisions is, in my opinion, too much. I think this could be accomplished by making this an option for the developer and allow them to develop the property, the type of homes in the neighborhoods that the market is demanding. It likely will include streetlights, but I don't think we should be forcing them to do that. I think what we're going to find is when we start creating more cost to the homes and forcing developers to build things a certain way, we'll have our legislators likely come back with some other changes as they're going to change these regs here coming up. And this is just one more flag to do that. So I think because of the lighting section, I'm going to oppose this. And if it would change to just say it's an option and or come back with a lighting plan that is approved in some way or another, I think that the idea of SEPTED is important and lighting is a part of that. And I fully agree with that. But I don't believe forcing developers to participate in that is where we as a city should go.
Very good. Further discussion, Councilmember Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I won't repeat the things I've said previously in meetings about what I feel is the importance of street lighting, but I do want to push back on the idea that the city of Billings is responsible for expensive housing. We are not responsible for expensive housing. If we understood the economics of building houses more deeply, we would realize the pressure that is increasing houses has nothing to do with our ordinance. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Further discussion on the motion. I'll chime in case people are counting noses, and I appreciate everybody's efforts. I think this is a great document. We've moved this very far forward. This needs to be approved, broadly speaking. On the streetlight issue, I also have to join in with Councilmember Kennedy and Councilmember Neese. Lighting clearly impacts people's perception of safety. It clearly adds to safety. It's very, very valuable. And so if this is approved, we move forward, more power to our community. I just have some concern about the degree of cost. Streetlights are expensive. The staff, and I appreciate staff putting together the staff or the cost numbers. I think we now have a much better sense on that, and that's very valuable. But the way I read the costs is it would add between $300 and $500 per month for the average homeowner. Per year. Did I say month? No, sorry. Good catch. Per year, which would vary depending about a 6% rate. Additional cost of about $4,800 to about $9,000 per home. And that's real money. At $300 to $500, even using the smallest number of 300, put it in scale. That's roughly twice of what the voters roundly rejected as an increase for major park development in our community, which was about $150 per median value home. It's roughly 3 times what our last public safety mill levy was to add all of those additional police. Would it make a difference? Absolutely. I just don't know that the data is clear enough to show it to make that much of a difference. Burglaries, yeah, I can see where it would. Most of our assaults, of course, are domestic inside the home. I don't see why lighting would make any difference there. Traffic enforcement, probably not. Many other categories of crime, shoplifting, other things like that, it's not gonna move the needle on. I would remain open if we came back to it to look and come back to this issue. It only would apply on new housing. But again, I see real value there. It's just, I haven't seen quite the value proposition given the situation we're at with the cost of housing now to add one, roughly $4,500 to $9,000. That's a little more than 1%, might be as much as 2%, 1 to 2% of cost. So, but I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate those who favor lighting. Other discussion, Councilmember Rowan.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to speak to Councilmember Aspenleiter's motion, which I will support. And I really want to appreciate the commitment that we can look at other costs, because I think, as I said before, that's the better way to tackle this. It's not an insignificant increase in cost, but if you have been victimized by a burglary, if your car has been broken into, that $300 goes pretty fast. I think we've also neglected to mention that well-designed, safe, well-lit neighborhoods will appreciate in value, allowing a homeowner to recoup some of those costs. I think the better thing to do, rather than continuing to pretend that property crimes are not a serious issue, is to implement this standard and find ways to offset that within the existing regulations, which I absolutely believe is possible. The cost of crime is not just the property tax cost, and we're forgetting that, I think. The cost of having to invest in Ring cameras and all sorts of lighting and what homeowners associations have to do. I visited with a childcare owner today who said they're considering hiring security to go on field trips with them because of just the sort of general perception that we're not safe in the community. And lighting isn't a silver bullet, but it's a piece of it. And I think we will see the overall benefit trend in favor of the homeowner. And I think we need to be very seriously incentivized to look for other cost improvements in our regulation, which I agree is much more broadly in the buildings department than this. So I will vote for adopting this tonight and expect to join in that commitment to seriously see where we can reduce the burden in other areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Again, this is on the underlying motion with just the one relatively minor amendment, I guess, direction to staff. Are we prepared to vote? Okay, I see a lot of nodding heads. So let's have a show of hands. First motion will be to approve the motion. If in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Voting in favor are Council Members Shaw, Gulick, Owen, Joy, Aspenleiter, Boyette, Rupsis, and Councilmember Tidswell. If in voting in opposition, raise your hand. Voting in opposition, Councilmembers Neese, Cole, and Kennedy. Motion passes, whatever the math is, 8-3. Thank you very much. I think that then resolves item number 4. And we'll wrap up, Council. Do we have any public comment on non-agenda items? So if anybody would like to comment on something that was not on our agenda tonight, this is your opportunity. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Tell us your name and address. Is there any public comment on something not on our agenda tonight? Go ahead, make a little line, come forward. Go ahead.
I'd like to comment on our MedBus system, and thank you for your time, Councilman Bill. And I'll be brief. I'll try to be pretty blunt.
And please, again, your name, sir.
Test one. Mayor Cole. I'd like to comment on the MedBus system. My experiences with them. The examples I'm about to give are not embellished, they're not created. As an example or a comparison, very briefly, I spent about 15 years in Seattle. In my opinion, and that of others, they have probably one of the finest bus systems in the country. I'll give you a couple of examples. In Seattle, in the downtown hub area, everybody rides free. It's a free ride zone. The reason being, the traffic congestion is not bottleneck, the smog, the annoyance, all of that is circumvented to a degree. If you miss a bus at a bus stop in Seattle, there will be another bus right behind it within 10 minutes. If you miss a bus, you'll be on in 10 minutes. It's also, the Seattle bus system is such to where you will be dropped off within 100 yards of your destination. You will, absolutely. Additionally, because of the rain, they also have electric buses. I was told that they were forward consideration here. There's some pros and cons to the electric system. Very quiet, maintenance, touchy, cold weather, I'm not so sure. That said, because of the rain in Seattle, it is very common to have two buses run back to back, because as good as the bus shelters are, they don't want people standing in the rain. The drivers love it. You've got two buses back to back. One of the disadvantages or advantages, there are certain routes in Seattle where an armed guard does ride on that bus. He doesn't ride to protect the bus, he rides to protect the driver. Now we get to Billings. When I first got to Billings, my hometown, moved back, Bill, we grew up together, worked together at the hospital. I have a brother that lives out on Interpoint Apartments, beyond Shiloh. I got a bus pass. I went out there. This is a Saturday. I have a titanium hip with my luggage. 5 o'clock, there came the bus. I was at the stop. There the bus went. Oh, well, that I understand that because it's not a common stop. We're all here. I didn't know that was the only 5 o'clock last bus on Saturday. So I walked from Shiloh in. The next Saturday, I got smarter. Okay, I can make that, absolutely.
Okay, the timer went off, so
Yes.
more frequent bus service. We got that. Can you wrap
Okay.
up?
Well, all right. I sat at the transit center here a couple of Saturdays ago, wondering where's the Broadwater bus? Asked one of the drivers. Oh, the Broadwater bus doesn't run on Saturdays. Oh, it doesn't? No, you have to catch the crosstown bus. Gotcha. I got on the crosstown bus, and he does work to Broadwater, to 16th. That's it. You're done. From the transit center, after I caught that bus on Saturday, they worked till 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock. I got to the transit center from Interpoint out at Shiloh. Driver said, there you go. Huh? I'm going to the barn. That was as far as the driver went. I said, well, I rode in from town. That's right. But from the transit center, Stuart, he goes to the barn. I walked in. I was sitting at the bus stop at Jake's place, on the bus stop. Jake's place, right down here. Here goes the bus. He went right by me. The guy stopped. I thought, this is wonderful. He's got
I'm going to have to catch up because
All
now
right.
you're a couple minutes over time.
Okay, well, there are
but if you got some of those details, feel free to
Yeah,
send
there are a lot of
an
issues that I had with.
to our city administrator, and
Okay.
he can follow up with our Met Transit
Yes, sir.
department.
I've done that with Josh a couple times. One question, and I will leave you all, Mayor Cole, for you personally.
You know,
A month
and
ago-
you
month
get a
ago-
better answer your question if you just send us an email.
One
or-
question.
Or call.
One question, sir.
Real short.
A month ago, when I addressed the council, we were here till about 9 o'clock, you folks, for a lot of very pertinent, relevant issues. When I made mention of the counterproductive, detrimental issues that Matt Lundgren had, why did you cut me off with 30 seconds and have me escorted out by the police department?
I probably cut you off because like tonight you were over, would be my guess. Craig, go ahead.
So Jim Mack, 2703 Two-Lane Drive. Good evening, Mayor and council members. As the board chair of nonprofit Off the Streets, I'm just here tonight to update you on what we're doing, our current status of our program. So I think it's important for you all to be up to speed on that. So it's no secret we have a problem with encampments in this city, and not just in this city, but multiple areas in the state and around the country. And that's in spite of the fact that we have great services. We have really good community partners that are doing everything they can to address the situation. But the fact that encampments exist tells us that there's a gap in services. And that gap really involves the chronically homeless, and that's our target population. It happens to be the most difficult population to address. You know, there's a lot of mental illness in that population, a lot of history of trauma, et cetera. So what are we doing about it? Well, at the current time, we as an organization are leasing space in the 4th Avenue Inn. We have space for 12 individuals. We've been doing this for a number of months now. 6 men, 6 women, low barrier shelter. It's not really completely low barrier, but reduced barrier shelter. And we take people in. We have an on-site amazing case manager who works very closely with those individuals, develops relationships with them. Our success rate has been, I would think, pretty phenomenal. Of the 90 individual people, unique people that we've served so far, about half of them have moved on to more permanent housing, and that's largely due to the efforts of our on-site case managers. So we have a program going. It's small. We'd love to expand it, but that's a funding issue. So I guess I'll leave the discussion by just saying that we would love to be a part of a community-wide collaborative solution to address what this community can do for the homeless as the weather turns colder right around the corner. And just wanted you all to be aware of that and to say that we're available to have any discussions that need to be had about that. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for your service, and thank you for that invitation and your work. Next.
Yeah, my name is Ryan Starks. My address is 225 Prospectors Lane. I'm here to talk about some stuff I heard with the water bill. Earlier this year, I was accused of fraud and embezzlement by the city. I work for solid waste. I was told by Jennifer DeRay that she doesn't believe me and my supervisors wouldn't lie to her, and she believes them over me. They threatened to take away my vacation time and suspend me for a violation of policy, fraud and embezzlement. I was verbally harassed by a superior during this time because of the slanderous accusations that were brought against me. They did a full investigation on this, a due process and everything like that, and I had them continue investigating mine because the times that I was accused of, I was actually working on my route, on routeware, on my computer. It came back that I was telling the truth the whole time. I received a call today from another employee from the city talking about the new system that's had so many problems. He said, this system is worthless, they know it's flawed, and they will not admit it. They've known for years that it was bad, and even with the new system, it's still flawed. The water department got the new software system really cheap. They couldn't get it to work, and the girls have been fighting with it all summer, trying to fix it. And even working overtime, they can't get it to work. That's why they had missed a bill, and it had to be billed 2 months out. And that was wrong because they couldn't get the number off that first month bill was correct. And then now they got it out, and it's all still wrong. This individual said that they are lying to us, and they are saying that everybody has water leaks. That's their solution. Everybody does not have water leaks, and Jennifer DeRay is ripping off the public because she's in charge of it. She's the one that got the system, and she knows exactly that it's not working and that the people are being billed incorrectly. Everybody has a 3/4 inch meter going into their home, is what I was told. They're getting billed like they have a 3-inch meter going into their home. The things don't add up, and this individual said there are so many things adding up, or that don't add up, and the software is really messed up. So a lot of people are concerned to come forward with this kind of stuff. I kind of am too, because I'm afraid maybe retaliation or the Whistleblower Act, hopefully it works. But if they're coming after me for fraud and embezzlement, when everything that I was doing was legit, and they know what they're doing is wrong, I think policy for the individuals that are working for you should be all the way up the line. And if people are being fraudulent and embezzling money, Jennifer DeRay and up should be held to the same standard that everyone else in the city is. And that would be termination. So just a extra thing for you guys to think about, because I know you guys hear a lot of different stuff from them, and I don't believe half the stuff they say because I've caught multiple superiors lying to me in my time here at the city. And I just go about my job and do the best I can. So that's all I have to say.
Very good.
Appreciate your guys' time.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you. And there is no doubt that we've had problems with the water bills and continue to work on those. We can't and won't go into individual personnel matters in this forum, but my understanding, Chris, is we'll have another update coming up.
I apologize. The whole thing was just that looking into this, you're having people hire an outside source that know they're doing something wrong. So why are they the ones hiring the source? Shouldn't that be something else?
This body will deal with that, but this is not the forum to have that kind of back and forth dialogue. But this body will be overseeing that. But thank you very much. Chris, I do want to just make sure when we're going to have our next update on the water bill situation so that the public knows and council knows.
Yeah, we can give another update next week. The work is progressing relative to the independent audit, that scope of work. And by the time we get here a week from now, we'll be able to provide an update. I do want to be clear, though, because it's been stated, nothing, unless comes out in an audit, nothing has indicated any type of fraud or embezzlement tied to any of these issues related to the problems we'd have with the software conversion. If an audit sees that, we will absolutely deal with it, but that has not been the case in any way, shape, or form in this review, or in the analysis. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. With that, any other public hearing or public comment on items not on our agenda tonight? No, so we'll close that point or part of our council or of our agenda. Any council initiatives? Seeing none, we are adjourned.
Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Kennedy.
Mayor, just a follow-up to Chris. Chris, will we get, will you tell us who is doing the audit and what they are doing and all of that next week then?
So Councilmember Kennedy, Mayor and Council. So two of your peers, Councilmember Owen and Councilmember Rupsis, have agreed to help us with the selection of the firm, as well as help us work through who ultimately does work. So a week ago, we committed to you all seeing the scope of work. So that'll get emailed out this week, what that scope looks like, whether by email, if it's clear enough, or an actual meeting would need to take place. That would include our internal staff and two council members led by our finance director, Zeller. That process, we believe, will be in a position to get somebody selected. So by next week, we would give you a full update on the progress we're making there on the audit, as well as the progress that our first round of 30-day bills started to go out late last week, Thursday, Friday, and the system has every 24 to 48 hours, the next group of roughly 10,000 bills going out. So by the time we get a week from today, we should have all four groupings, or 40,000 customers. We can give you an update on how that rolled out. So those would be the updates I would anticipate being able to provide you, as well as anything else internal, a week from today.
Okay, very good. Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.